Hello, Fish Faithful. I am Kurt Semder, and this is Marlins Daily on the Fan Arch Network. Thanks so much for being here with us once again today. And unfortunately, once again today here on Marlins Daily, the daily occurrence continues to be a Marlins loss. 9 straight losses now after a 5-2 defeat to the Astros last night. And look, we've said that this road trip coming out of the All-Star break was going to be important. It couldn't have gone worse. Couldn't have gone worse. Lost every game, 0-6. Couple that with the 3 losses before the All-Star break, and that's how we got to this 9-game losing streak right now that the Marlins have found themselves in. And suddenly this team is just 1 game over 500 and 8 games back in the National League East and struggling to keep pace with the other National League wildcard contenders. Now, looking at this game last night, and we'll start there today, this was a game that, you hoped that they were going to be able to figure out a way to win. They had Sandy Alcantara on the mound. He's their ace. He's their go-to guy. Got off to a little bit of a slow start like we've seen in the past. Not a big deal. It happens to him a lot. But kept them in the game, giving up just, a run in the second, a home run to Jeremy Pena in the third. That left them down 2-0, but gave the team a chance to battle back, which they did in the 4th inning. Javier Sanoa with a big RBI double. Joe Mack added an RBI single. This game was tied at 2, and then Sandy did what Sandy does, and he just kind of cruised along and, kept the Astros, for the most part, off the bases, kept them from getting into threatening situations, and most importantly, kept them in the ballpark. But the offense was unable to take advantage of that and add on any runs against Peter Lambert and the Astros bullpen. So we got to a situation in the 8th inning where, Sandy is still on the mound, approaching 100 pitches. And I would love to sit here and second guess that decision, but I don't think you can. Sandy going over 100 pitches is nothing new, and it's not a big deal. This bullpen has been absolutely taxed and worked down to the nub, basically, over the last week in some games that you wish starters had gone longer in. And instead, Sandy comes in facing, the meat of this lineup, basically, the toughest guys that the Astros have. And, if you're Clayton McCullough, I think Sandy Alcantara is your best option, even approaching 100 pitches against the likes of Jeremy Pena and Jordan Alvarez and Isaac Paredes. And, Pena gets a hit. You're still feeling okay. You're facing a guy in Alvarez who's having an MVP type season, and he shows you why as he just blasts the pitch from Sandy the other way, over the wall, the high wall in left field, for a 2-run back-breaking home run on his 101st pitch of the game. And that should have been his night. That should have been the end, but he had to stay in the game because, for some reason that I have not been able to figure out, Clayton McCullough did not have anyone warming up at the start of the inning. So, when Pena got a hit and Alvarez came up, Michael Peterson got up really quickly, but he's going to need a couple of batters to get loose and get warmed up. Alvarez hits the home run, and you have to keep Sandy in there still. And Isaac Paredes, who's a guy who I said the Marlins should target as a possible trade candidate, somebody who they could add to their team, shows you why, as he just crushes a ball over the fence in left field and gives Houston a 3-run lead, and they go on to win it there from there 5-2. And then, then after another batter, we get the pitching change because they're trying to figure out what's going on there in the bullpen. I wouldn't have taken Sandy out. I would have taken him out after the Alvarez home run. I don't know why they didn't have anybody. I mean, it's not like he had a tough at bat with Pena. He was going to go over 100 pitches in the inning. I think that's a situation where, as a manager, where you need to be like, okay, I'm going to put my starter, I'm going to put my ace back out there. But if he runs into trouble or he gives up any runs, we're going to go to the bullpen. And they weren't ready for that. And that was a mistake. So I wouldn't have taken him out. I don't second guess letting him pitch to Alvarez, but I do second guess not having somebody ready to come into the game right after that. Maybe you limit the damage, maybe you keep it at 4-2, and you give yourself a chance in the top of the ninth. Instead, down 3 runs, they didn't get anything done, and boom, just like that, the Marlins lose their 9th straight game. And I'll give Clayton one thing I liked on top of everything else. No Jacob Marcy in the lineup. Went to Esteury Ruiz in center field, and he got a hit, which is something we haven't seen from Jacob Marcy in a while. So I appreciate I'm not saying it had anything to do with this, but I appreciate after yesterday's rant about how he needs to be out of the lineup or at least give him a day off, they gave him a day off. So, look, they've given back so much of the goodwill that they built in June in the span of a week and a half. And it's really frustrating to watch because they really looked like they were doing everything right. They were getting good pitching. They were getting good, effective innings out of the bullpen. The offense was clicking. They were getting key hits. They were playing good defense. They looked like they were a good team, or at least a team that was playing like a good team. And over the last week or so, they are playing like a bad team. They are finding ways to lose rather than finding ways to win. And you could see it on the faces of the guys in the dugout after the loss last night that they just don't know. They look shell-shocked. They look like they just took a knockout punch from all directions in these last 2 series against Houston and against Milwaukee. And you hope that maybe coming home this week, they can find some of that magic they had last month and they can kind of rebound and put it back together. But right now, they were nipping at the heels of the Phillies. They were right there. We were talking about them maybe contending for a division. They're 8 games back now. There's a lot of ground they got to make up in a hurry. And it's just hasn't been pretty. There were, the games in Milwaukee where, you lose on 2 of those games on walk-off hits. You can chalk that up to bad luck, I suppose. But these games in Houston were not like that. And this is not a Houston team that, they're trying to find their identity and they're trying to see what they are going to be like this season and if they're going to make a run or not. And coming out of this series, if you look at these 2 teams, you'd say Houston's going to try to make a postseason run and Miami is not. Don't want to make too much out of 3 games, but it's a 9-game losing streak now. And you have to really start to be concerned about this team's prospects this season and what they can do. And again, they put themselves in this situation. Friend of the program, Thomas Joseph said, we talked about this the other day, Tyler Phillips couldn't get through 5 innings. And, he said, he threw like 60 pitches, wasn't given the chance to extend himself and maybe go a little longer into the game. And TJ says another robotic move and, of course, another loss. And he's right. Because you have to, especially in these situations, you can't just rely on one pitcher to give you innings. And they seem to be doing that with Sandy. He shows he can do it, and that's fine, but other guys got to be able to step up too. And I would have liked to have seen them give Tyler Phillips the chance the other day, maybe save the bullpen a little bit. Maybe you have some arms that are a little bit more well-rested in a situation like the game we saw last night. Instead, they're just putting themselves in really, really bad situations and kind of playing themselves into a corner here where they may not have the answers that they need to get the job done in some of these big games. And, when I sit here and I start trying to figure out what is the reason, why is this happening? Why has this team lost 9 games in a row? The main thing I looked at is the offense, because that, I feel like, is where the problem is. And the numbers that I'm about to give you back it up. In this 6 games since the All-Star break, okay, the Marlins have struck out, their batters have struck out 65 times. 65 times in 6 games. All right? That is more than that's more than 10 strikeouts a game. That's bad. That's an average. That's not very good. They've only gotten 12 walks, but that's not the half of it. Runners in scoring position. Okay, when the Marlins needed to get big hits with guys on the bases, something that they were doing a lot in June during their big run where they looked like they were unbeatable at times. Okay, against Houston, 2 for 22. Against Milwaukee, 4 for 21. That is a combined 6 hits in 43 chances with runners in scoring position, batting just 139. Okay? So an average of one time per game since the All-Star break, they've gotten a hit with runners in scoring position. Not good. Not good. And when you go individually by players, it starts to look even worse. Heriberto Hernandez has been really good. I'll give him credit. He's hitting 320 since the break. He's doing great. Javier Sanoa hitting over 300 as well. He's come up with some clutch hits. But it gets pretty bad from there. I mean, Kyle Stowers has just gotten 3 hits since the break. He's batting 125. Liam Hicks, 227. Xavier Edwards, what is going on with the X-Man right now? 2 for 23 since the break. He's batting under 100. I don't know if he needs a day off or something. I don't think they can afford to give him a day off, but he's only gotten 2 hits, and he's gotten a lot of strikeouts. He's maybe got to hit the cages. I don't know what it is, but he's struggling. Griffin Coney's been okay, 5 of 18, not too bad. Joe Mack, 4 of 18, and a couple of home runs. Jacob Marcy, we talked about, 1 of 13 since the All-Star break. And Otto Lopez was injured, but he's come back and he's 4 for 15. But you look at these guys, none of these guys are hitting well over these 6 games since the break, and none of these guys are getting hits in big spots. The runners in scoring position stats back that up. And if you're in a pennant race and you're looking to, contend with some of these teams that are looking to make the playoffs themselves, you can't have the whole team go into these extended slumps. And of the guys I just mentioned, basically every night, it seems like 6 or 7 of the guys in your starting lineup are just not hitting. And it's not going to get it done. Not going to get it done. And then when you add on top of that the fact that the starters are pitching well, but you're asking them basically to not give up more than 2 runs to give you a chance to win a game. And even if they do that, the guys coming in from the bullpen are struggling to the point that they're giving up more runs and you can't produce. It's not a winning formula. And it hasn't been now for a week or so. And maybe they just got to sit back down and try to figure out what they did back in June and see if they can replicate that. But this weekend, this series coming up, these next 6 games are going to be huge. These games against San Diego and against Philadelphia, they are going to pretty much decide what the Marlins do. They got some games with the Mets coming up after that, who the Mets are actually playing a little bit better right now. The Marlins should be able to beat them if they feel like they are going to try to get into the playoffs, but they're not going to be the pushover games that they probably would have been a couple of weeks ago. But what you have coming up now is a stretch of games that they got to turn this thing around, and they got to turn it around in a big way. I'm talking about 6-0, 5-1. I don't even know if 4-2 gets it done over these next 6 games, because the big decision coming up here is, as we've mentioned, is the trade deadline. And yes, the Marlins front office has said they're going to be buyers, but that was 2 weeks ago when this team was playing well and they were hot and they were right in the middle of it. Peter Bendix has to be taking phone calls right now. He's got to be seeing what's out there, because, there aren't a lot of teams that have already said they're going to be sellers, and the Marlins have some players that other teams would definitely be interested in acquiring. Sandy's at the top of that list. And maybe that's the way to go, because the way this team has played over the last 6 games, 9 games now, do they really look like a team that's just a couple of pieces away from contending for a World Series championship? I don't think so. I just don't see it. I wish that it was like that. If you asked me this, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I felt differently, because you had guys in the lineup producing. The pitching was great. They didn't have the injuries that they have now. A lot can change in 2 weeks, and a lot has changed, unfortunately, for the Marlins in 2 weeks. And I think they're going to have to really take a good look in the mirror and see what is best for them moving forward. Now, if they can get it done against San Diego and get it done against Philly and turn this around and look like the team we saw in June, then absolutely start thinking about making some big moves at the deadline and adding some pieces and adding some guys. But if they play like this again for the next 6 games, if this losing streak starts to continue to stretch, or even if they, only go 2-4, something like that, what do you do? What would you like to see them do? I know what I would do, but what do you want to see them do? Do you want to see them go for it? Do you think they still have it in them to put it all together? Or are the Marlins that we saw in the first 2 months of the season, is that what they actually are? And June was just a fluke and an aberration. I don't know. I don't know. Tomorrow we're going to dive a little bit more into the trade deadline and kind of what we think this team is going to do, because, tomorrow is a day off for the team, and man, it is a much needed day off. Coming off the road trip, not with going 0-6, 9 straight losses, as we've mentioned, this team needs a break, which is saying something. 6 games out from the All-Star break, but they need a break. Still don't know who's pitching in this game. This would have been Max Meyer's spot, but of course he's hurt with the neck strain. We'll see who takes the mound to see if it's a bullpen game situation, which, again, with a bullpen that's exhausted, is not really the strongest way to go, but might be the only way they can do it. And then, like we said, San Diego in on Friday, start of a big series. Marlins got to get it done. But in the meantime, on this day off, they got to really, take a good look in the mirror and see what they want this season to be. Because if they want this season to be something that they can look back on with some pride, it's something that they can back on and say they played meaningful games in September, it happens now. Because, they can't make the playoffs this week, but they can certainly miss the playoffs if things go poorly. And this front office will not hesitate to go the other direction if things go poorly in the next 6 games. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and the trade deadline possibilities tomorrow here on Marlins Daily. Hopefully we can figure out a way to snap this losing streak on them on Friday. Brighter days are ahead, but hopefully those brighter days are going to get here sooner rather than later, because these last couple of games have been brutal to watch. They've been tough to watch. And you know what? Let's just keep the faith and hope, fish faithful, they can turn this thing around. Marlins Daily, we will be back with you tomorrow. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you then.